11 o'clock. Well, now on the West Coast. And this is DC, out of control. What's up, everybody? Having a live day. Because, you know, what we've been waiting for is here. Finally. The long-awaited Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, Wyden, Cannabis Legalization bill. It's been touted for months, and it got released today. Well, sort of. There's 162 pages of a draft discussion bill, or a discussion draft. Taking comments, public comment. Call to action, folks. Cheesy YouTube music. What's up, everybody? See some folks jumping in the chat. A dingo ate my baby. Long time no see. Welcome to the new show. This is the part 2. This is the second part of the show. Make sure, tell me if I'm sound okay. I think I am. I think everything is going out great. I think we're live. We are going to go live to the press conference, Chuck Schumer's press conference at 9:15 or 12:15 East Coast time to see what he has to say about this new bill, or this new draft discussion bill. Or it's a, I don't even know what really it is. It's not actually a bill. It is a here. Let's take a look. This says, to decriminalize and deschedule cannabis, to provide for reinvestment in certain persons adversely impacted by the war on drugs, to provide for expungement of certain cannabis offenses, and for other purposes. 163 pages in the Senate of the United States. Mr. Booker for himself, Mr. Wyden, and Mr. Schumer introduced the following bill, which was read twice and referred to the committee. And it's 163 pages. I have not read the entire bill, but thankfully, where is it? Oh, there it is. Kyle Jaeger did over at Marijuana Moment. Shout out to Kyle Jaeger at Marijuana Moment and everybody over at Marijuana Moment, Tom Angel and folks. Amazing news website, everything you could possibly want to know about cannabis and psychedelics for that matter. And where I get a good portion of our news for controlled and out of control. And Kyle spent all night going over the 163 pages and did a very in-depth analysis of what was going on. And we'll dig into that a little bit, keeping an eye on the time. It's about 12 minutes away from that press conference, which we will go to when they start. But let's just take a look at a couple of highlights. This is from the write-up in the Business Insider. We'll get more into Kyle Jaeger's work after the press conference. But just briefly here, Jeremy Burke. In the bill, cannabis would be fully descheduled. Interstate commerce would be allowed. 21 age minimum. 10-ounce limits. Taxes starting at 10%. And escalating to 25% by year 5. That's a little excessive in my mind. How about you? Regulated by the FDA and the TTB, and not just them. That's tobacco. It's actually going to be regulated by 4 different groups. The FDA, I believe ATF is in there, but we'll look deeper into that. But the FDA might be the big one. That might be the big problem. This is what happened to hemp. Hemp got kicked out of the CSA and became regulated by the FDA and the USDA. I know I don't see USDA in this, but and that just opened up a whole can of worms for everything that was extracted from the hemp plant, because it's now regulated by the FDA and really not regulated at all in some instances. So that's questionable what's going on there. About we're going from one organization, the DEA, in control, to now 4 different organizations, 3 or 4. Expungement of records, community reinvestment, awesome. And incentivize research into cannabis, because God knows we need more of that. Most researched medicinal herb on the planet, but we need more research, of course. We certainly do. Certainly for CBD, certainly for isolates, we need more. I mean, there's new studies going on. There's a grant just made by the NIH to study cannabis with AIDS patients, HIV patients. And it's, of course, the study is geared towards looking for the negative aspects, making the virus reservoir bigger because they smoked cannabis. So hopefully they will find the opposite, and then actually the benefits outweigh the potential harm. Politico, of course, picked it up. Schumer launches long shit. Well, yeah, because what is that, Freudian slip? Yeah, well, I think he is up for re-election next year, guys. Cannabis 2022, the midterms are going to be as they were last time. And of course, the regular election, in the 2022 is going to be even more cannabis. Schumer launches long shot bid for legal weed. The majority leader backs marijuana legalization, but he still needs to convince his party, Republicans, and even the president. Finding no lies there, that is for sure. I think, he's going to have to convince Joe Manchin, probably Kirsten Sinema, and more. So, this is all to be determined. This could be all just smoke and mirrors, all just a game. We know that Wyden certainly is in for the long haul on cannabis. Interesting that there's interstate commerce in there. Banking is in there. Banking is in here to protect so your credit cards and your investors and stocks are all going to be able to be taken care of. But this, of course, is a discussion draft. This is not a bill that's going to be voted on. This is going to be, they're going to be taking commentary, public comments through September, I believe. And I'll get that information while we're watching this press conference. I'll have it up for you and put it in the comments where you can go to make your comments about this bill or this draft discussion bill. Let's see what a couple of things that Kyle Jaeger picked up on. The basic components. Perhaps the most immediately consequential provision would be a requirement that the Attorney General to remove marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act within 60 days of the bill's enactment. That is pretty cool. Now, this is as Dale Geringer said in our interview on the premiere of Controlled. Check out our 2-hour premiere from July 3rd. I think it was a pretty good show, and you should enjoy it. And we had a couple of great interviews, and one was with Dale Geringer of California NORML, and of course he called descheduling the big enchilada. So this is the big enchilada, descheduling, taking it off the Controlled Substances Act within 60 days of the bill's enactment. Long road to go. Let's see, but it's important to keep in mind that this legislation, like other federal legalization bills moving through Congress, would not make it so marijuana is legal in every state. Here comes the states' rights, because in this bill, states may still maintain their prohibition. Now, thankfully, there are more and more states that are not doing that. 19 fully to count, if it hasn't changed already. Rhode Island hasn't joined in yet. But 19 plus 36 on the medical, more to come, and of course midterms coming up. We already see ballot initiatives going on in states that were knocked down before. So it's back. Cannabis is back, Cannabis 2022. And, so the states that are left, there's going to be a couple of hardliners that are still left that will have some form of control and to criminalize this plant. And the feds are going to be okay with that in this bill. So this is, I think this might get your more bipartisan support by allowing some states' rights. But does this really deschedule cannabis if states can discriminatorily prohibit the plant? That'll end up in front of the Supreme Court maybe. So we'll see about that. Let's see. The proposal specifically preserves the right of states to maintain prohibition in that way. It stipulates, for example, that shipping marijuana into a state where the plant is prohibited would still be federally illegal. I'm assuming that probably crossing those state lines are going to be illegal as well. And so states like Oregon, Washington, California, and Nevada that are all linked could transport across those state lines. But if you had to go across a state that prohibited it, you wouldn't be able to. So let's see, however, the measure would make it clear that states can't stop businesses from transporting cannabis projects across their borders. All right, well, it does address that. So we'll see if that gets left in. So that's good news. That's very good. Oregon's got a lot of weed, and they could use a nice export. And why not? Why shouldn't we be able to? I know our California producers aren't going to be happy about that. California is a mess. We're going to be covering that in the next episode of Controlled. First Saturday in August. We're going to go deep into the dysfunctional social equity program here in California, as well as the licensing that is just, it's ridiculous in California. So we're going to be talking a lot more about that. But our producers here in California aren't going to necessarily appreciate more Oregon weed coming in. But I've had Oregon weed. It's pretty good. So I think competition is great. I think there's enough plant for everybody. You know, let's get over that and let's have a free market. You know, it's the most highly regulated agricultural product on the planet, because technically it's not an agricultural product in California, as we discussed with Dale. It's actually categorized differently. So that's why if it smells, they can shut you down. If you have a legal grow and the smell is a problem and you can't control it, that's reason to shut it down, because it's not technically an agricultural product. Whereas garlic and the cow slaughterhouses, the feed barns all along Route 5 there in California that smell terribly, they're okay. But cannabis is no good. It smells bad. So we're about a little over 2 minutes out from this press conference. We'll see if he goes live. And we're going to bring it to you. Of course, we are discussing this new bill, or this new draft discussion bill that is going to be released today, and we'll see what they have to say. Let's see, where are they? It's coming from the Schumer's page. This is Schumer's page. I'm a shout out to Kyle Jaeger. He hooked me up with this link. So this is where apparently where Schumer streams from all his press conferences. So we're going to watch it from there. Let's see what else you're saying in the chat. Welcome everybody. Dingo Ate My Baby is here. Sir Dirty is here. Welcome. They talk about it, but nothing ever happens. We have politicians on the board of Wall Street cannabis companies. I grow for, let's see, John Boehner, also known as the guy from Pelosi in the GOP side. Yep, legal for Corp, not us. Yeah, Boehner was connected to Acreage Holdings, as well as an investment group, cannabis investment group. I believe he has, I have not been able to confirm that, but I have heard that Boehner is no longer involved in cannabis, but I haven't been able to confirm that. I also heard today that Schumer is heavily invested in Acreage Holdings. So I look forward to confirming that. Yes, it starts at 12:15 Eastern. We're about a minute away, and we will go to it as soon as they are live. Thank you for joining in. Mike Mack, we just need these companies to be able to list on the exchange. This is crazy on OTC. Definitely one of the things that is covered in the bill is being able to get these stocks onto the U.S. exchanges like they are in Canada. And I'm sure psychedelics won't be far behind on that. Banking is also a huge deal. They want credit cards. You know, they want to be able to take credit cards legally and without jumping through massive amounts of hoops, which apparently some companies are able to do. Ease, of course, got their app approved on Apple, the Apple Store, their app. And it says you can pay for your cannabis right there on the app. And that's not something that's been able to be done since they were originally shut down over bank fraud a little while ago. So, but apparently you can pay for your cannabis if you've got an iPhone in California and download the app, because I have a terrible Android. But apparently you can buy weed on the Ease platform through their delivery app there. So things are changing with banking. The banks want their money, that's for sure, and they're going to get it. And they are, and of course, who's suffering from this are the businesses, the small businesses in particular, as well as the patients. Patients are always affected by these taxes, and that seems to be the only way we get these laws passed in any of the states, is that if there's heavy taxes on board. Jordan Stone, welcome to the stream. When are they voting on the bill? It's not even close to being a vote. Jordan, we're a long way off. This is a discussion bill. Nothing is going to be binding on this. This is a bill that's going to be edited and adapted based on the input of other lawmakers like Manchin and other conservative Democrats, as well as Republicans, and also public comment. They're allowing public comment, I believe, through the end of September, and I'll get those details once this presser starts. I just heard about that this morning, and I will get those details and drop them in the chat and in the comment. So yeah, there's no close. We've been waiting for Schumer to announce his bill since January at least. It's been rumored every month, particularly in April. But they keep saying it's coming, it's coming, it's going to be big, it's going to be big. We're conferring, we're talking to lawmakers, we're talking to lawmakers. So they're going to talk to more lawmakers and get more input, and they're going to get public input, which is great. We love doing public input. Hey, Daily Dope Show, welcome to the show, brother. The corporate takeover rolls on. Yes, indeed, indeed. This is full of corporate cannabis giveaways, as similar to what's going on here in California on a federal level. The taxes are just out of control. They're going to start at 10% and go up to 25% if that stays in this bill. So I would definitely include that in your public comment about these ridiculous taxes. There's no way they're going to limit or eliminate the traditional market if they have these kind of taxes. A federal tax. California, in the highest taxed localities in California, you pay 38% tax on your cannabis. And if you let's add another 25% federal taxes on that. So now, I don't know how that works out, but it works out to a lot of money being taken out of your cannabis purchase. So, hey, Daily Dope, thank you very much, man. Appreciate your kudos. I always appreciate your work and your passion. So thanks for sticking with us in our downtime. We're back, and we're in LA. I didn't have to change my name. You can follow me on Twitter. Still waiting for this to start, guys. I'm watching the stream, waiting for that press conference to start, and we will join it as soon as it does. As a matter of fact, I'll bring it up. But you can follow me with all the breaking news, cannabis news that I find throughout the month, building up to Out of Control when I go live for special stuff, as well as Controlled on the first Saturday of the month with my partner, Coach Chella. And but follow me over on at DC420 LA. I moved back to LA after the pandemic, and so I didn't have to change my name. But I'm a native of LA, so it fits. So follow me everywhere at DC420 LA. And we are waiting for Chucky the Shoe, Ron Wyden, and Cory Booker probably to be at this press conference. I'm thinking. Wyden tweeted about it this morning. Let's see what he had to say. Oh, here we go. Stay tuned. Event is starting soon. They are live. They are alive over there. So I know Wyden was excited about this. He's been trying to do this for a long time. And we are going to hear what they have to say and how excited they are. They've been trying to do this. They've been getting input for months now. They've been talking about this since before the year, I believe, before the first of the year. But really, starting in January, they really started pushing this. And okay, it's coming. We're working on it. We're talking to people. And so here they are. And they are, it's a draft discussion bill. So more delaying, really, more delay. And, there's a lot of, you got midterms are going to be huge for cannabis. So we'll see. We're going to see how long it takes them to get the input they need. Public input is available, is happening on through September. I'll get the details of that as soon as they start. and I can slip away. Let's see what Ron Wyden says. Ron says, this is big. Today, Senator Booker, Senator Schumer, and I are releasing our draft legislation to end the federal prohibition of cannabis. Awesome, Senator Wyden, and thoughts and good energy sending you and your folks up there in Oregon. A lot of wildfires. The wildfires have started in earnest here in California and Oregon, and cannabis is deeply involved and affected by these. Oregon was almost devastated. Their hemp crops, any outdoor grows near fires are just can be devastated, as well as implicated. Unfortunately, a large cannabis company in California looks like they figured out they started one of the fires accidentally. But the fires start any number of ways here in California, and Oregon. We are of course in a huge drought. So Ron Wyden taking time out from keeping watch on his constituents there to share this information about the new bill that's being introduced. Draft discussion bill. Never heard of this type of bill before, but we're going to hear about it anytime now from the Senate Majority Leader, the Senator from Oregon, Ron Wyden, and the Senator from New Jersey, Cory Booker. Daily Dope. The old days of Republicans being anti-legalization should be at least over, but will the Democrats sabotage their own bill? Real question. I got here late. Yes, that you did not. You got here right on time. It hasn't started, Daily Dope. You're never late. You're never wrong because it's never over. Apparently, it's never over. Yes, they do take the cannabis out of the CSA within 60 days of passing the bill, and they move it over to being regulated by the FDA, tobacco, and I believe the ATF. TTB, TBT, TBT, what was it called? I'll get the names. But the FDA is going to have their grubby little fingers in it. You know how that goes. But it does come off the CSA. It allows, however, states' rights. States would still be able to prohibit it and regulate it however they like. So I don't know how that's going to stand up in a court of law. I think maybe Justice Clarence Thomas might have something to say about that. And so that'll probably, if that does go through, equal justice and all, how can you have something federally descheduled and still have it a law? I don't know. I guess there's some level of, I guess that's called federalism. So yeah, Nebraska, you might still be screwed. But in most of at least 19 states, you'll be just fine. So we are waiting in earnest ourselves for this amazing history-making event. Of course, we did stream when we passed the MORE Act. The MORE Act has been reintroduced. We covered that on our last Controlled show. The MORE Act is back. There are elements of the MORE Act in here. I've not seen a response from any of and here we go. Oh, shit. Hang on, guys. Sorry.
This is monumental. I was the first Democratic leader to come out for the legalization of marijuana, and I will use my clout as majority leader to make this a priority in the Senate. As my colleagues and I have said before, the war on drugs has really been a war on people, particularly people of color. The Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act would help put an end to the unfair targeting and treatment of communities of color by removing cannabis from the federal list of controlled substances. This is an idea, it's not just an idea whose time has come, it's long overdue. We have all seen the agony of a young person arrested with a small amount of marijuana in his or her pocket. And because of the historical overcriminalization of marijuana, they have a very severe criminal record they have to live with their whole lives. Tougher to get a job, tougher to get credit, tougher to live a normal life. The waste of human resources because of the historic overcriminalization has been one of the great historical wrongs for the last decades. And we are going to change it. We are going to fight hard to change it. And America is on our side. 70% of Americans now support legalizing adult use of marijuana. In the 2020 election, it was put on the ballot by petition in South Dakota, and even South Dakota, one of the most conservative states in America, a majority voted to legalize adult recreational use of marijuana. If South Dakota can do it, the Senate should be able to do it. And we're going to fight to make sure it happens. My thinking, of course, like so many others, has evolved on the issue. When the laboratory of states, led by Senator Wyden's state in Colorado, legalized, the opponents had listed this parade of horribles. Drug use will go up, crime will go up. Well, that didn't happen. None of those parade of horribles ever occurred. And now, for justice and for freedom, it makes eminent sense to legalize marijuana. A number of states, including my own of New York, just legalized recently. The doom and gloom predictions haven't materialized in any of these states. And as more and more states legalize marijuana, it's time for our federal cannabis law to catch up. We also very much believe in the expungement of records. Because of the historical overcriminalization, people shouldn't have to live. If they had a small amount of marijuana in their possession, people shouldn't have to live with a criminal record the rest of their lives. Expunge those records. Let these people become productive citizens without that criminal record, severe criminal record, hanging over their head. We also want to make sure that there's a fair administration and that smaller businesses and communities of color are not left out as marijuana is legalized and sold across the country. So this is a bill we've consulted the experts, we've consulted many of our colleagues, and the next step for this critical legislation is getting further input from stakeholder groups, which is essential to the legislation's success. It's time for the country to engage in this discussion and update our federal laws, not only to reflect popular wisdom, but science. I yield to Senator Wyden.
Thank you, Majority Leader Schumer. And I'm going to be brief. This is cannabis common sense. And I'm very pleased to be here with the Majority Leader, my friend Senator Booker, who has done so much work on this issue. And I'm here because the current cannabis prohibition, a pillar in the failed war on drugs, has been devastating to millions of Americans who seek only common sense and fairness from their government. For example, it defies common sense that small businesses now living in areas where cannabis is legal cannot deduct their business expenses or access the banking system. A few days ago, I saw exactly what cannabis common sense is when I visited a dispensary in Astoria, Oregon. The employees came up to me when I was there and they said, "Ron, thanks for what you're doing to legalize cannabis back there in D.C. Right now," said the employees, "we're getting great pay and great benefits, and they want that to be made more available." Now, during the year when most businesses were struggling to keep their doors open, the COVID period, the cannabis industry added hundreds of jobs. And as I mentioned, they were good paying jobs with health care and other benefits. And what we're going to do is make small businesses and minority entrepreneurs a fixture at the table, a place where they have always been sidelined and shut out. For example, our proposal is going to give them an opportunity to get ahead through the small business grant programs, and we want to make sure that they get a fair shake in taxation, which is why they are going to pay half the rate of the big businesses. This moment has culminated for years with red and blue states alike taking action. And I'm very thrilled that the Majority Leader and Senator Booker have incorporated many of the provisions that were in my S-420 bill that I introduced a number of years ago. This is cannabis reform done right, a good dose of common sense and fairness that is long overdue in America. And with the leader's indulgence, can we just go to Senator Booker?
No. I introduce Cory Booker.
I have never been fought over like that before. This is a historic day. This is a historic day. The United States of America has never seen a day like this before. The first time, Senator Schumer said it was the first time a Democratic leader. No, this is the first time in American history the Majority Leader of the United States Senate is leading the call to end prohibition of marijuana. And joining him is the chairperson of arguably one of, if not the most powerful committees in the United States Senate. This is a historic day that these two leaders are going to put their will and their work and all of their heart behind this justice bill. It has been a long journey to this moment. In my very first months in the Senate, in the basement, I had a press conference with families of children who have...
It was supposed to be
something called Gervais syndrome, which is seizures. The brave young girl sitting in a wheelchair had over, at times, 100 a day. And her mother was what you call a marijuana refugee because it was illegal in her state, so she moved to a state where marijuana had been legalized at the state level, but she talked about the fact that she was still violating federal law and that she could be prosecuted, that the person that was providing it could be prosecuted, that universities couldn't study marijuana to get the dosage right for her child. During that press conference, her child fell into a seizure. To this day, it's still one of the most moving moments of my Senate career. That we have criminalized Americans, and now some people, for trying to help their child, and now some people are probably wondering, well, oh, people aren't getting arrested anymore for possession of marijuana. Well, I'll tell you right now, I saw it when Jeff Sessions became the Attorney General and said he would restart prosecutions. I see it now in the facts all around our country. In 2019, there were more marijuana arrests than all other violent crime arrests combined. And the majority of those were for simple possession. This is a grievous reality. Lives are being destroyed every single day. And the hypocrisy of this is that right here in the Capitol, now people running for Congress, people running for Senate, people running for President of the United States readily admit that they've used marijuana. But we have children in this country, people all over this nation, our veterans, black and brown people, low-income people, now bearing the stain of having a criminal conviction for doing things that half of the last 4 presidents admitted to doing. We are in the midst of a grievous moment of injustice, and it is deep at the core of who we say we are, equal justice under law. And so we have waited too long. We've seen the disaster of prohibition once before in this nation. This is hurting every American, and I end with this fact. Law enforcement resources all over this country are desperately needed to solve crimes that are hurting other Americans, theft and larceny and assault, sexual assault, and other violence. But yet, instead, we have our precious resources being used to lock up majority black and brown people for doing things that presidents and congresspeople and senators have done. This bill is urgent. This bill is long past due. And I am proud that today we are making history by having the two champions on either side of me leading this fight to finally end the war on drugs, which, as Senator Schumer said, has been a war on people, to end prohibition once and for all for marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take questions on this subject only. Go ahead, DeBonis.
This issue has broad support in your caucus. It has significant fiscal implications. Why not include it in the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill that you expect to pass in the next couple months?
Because this is going to be a process. This is a draft bill. We intend to show it to all of the stakeholders. We don't have the votes necessary at this point, but we have a large majority of our caucus for it. We're going to show it to the others and say, well, what don't you like? What do you like? And we'll see if we can get the support. But we're going to put our muscle behind it, our effort behind it, and we are going to get this done ASAP.
Yes, there's a lot of skepticism on Wall Street and from the sort of the business analysts who are looking at this, that you'll ever be able to get 10 Republicans for something this sweeping, that maybe you could do something smaller, like a banking bill, like something that's a little bit more...
A banking bill deals with a small part of this, but not what needs to be done. We need a broad, comprehensive bill.
Can I just say something on that?
Go ahead.
I'm telling you right now, if somebody tries in the Senate to do just a banking bill, they're going to make all the wealth and the money that is going after this already is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But what could become a even bigger industry, to just do it so some people can get rich and not do something about the people who are languishing with criminal convictions, not do something on restorative justice, not do something to make sure that the business opportunities are created are fairly given a fair playing field, where right now in many states, someone who has a criminal conviction for selling marijuana can't get a license now. I don't know about other members of the Senate, but I will lay myself down to do everything I can to stop an easy banking bill that's going to allow all these corporations to make a lot more money off of this, as opposed to focusing on the restorative justice aspects.
Let me just make sure we understand about the revenue. The revenue generated through legalizing cannabis will go directly to support restoration of the lives of those most harmed by the war on drugs, as well as public health and safety. What we're talking about, of course, this week, things like clean energy, for example, and other priorities, we're going to focus on making sure that the super wealthy and millionaires pay their fair share as part of covering those priorities.
And let me just say, communities of color have paid such an awful price for the historical overcriminalization of marijuana that we want to make sure that the money goes back to them and doesn't just get, the biggest, strongest banker gets to just scoop it all up.
Expunge records.
Right.
And expunge records, I mentioned that, yes.
Yes. Have any of you spoken to anyone at the White House about this idea, and what is your sense of
The White House knows we are introducing this legislation, and we intend to show them the draft legislation and ask them to support it. Yes.
You mentioned a laboratory of states sort of leading the way on this. What would a proposal like this mean for states that haven't taken that step to legalize various forms?
They'd have to catch up to probably where their public is.
But it will be their option. And that is why, for the life of me, I don't understand how Republicans who say they're for states' rights won't support what my colleagues are talking about. Because what this bill does is we decriminalize at the federal level, but we don't require states to legalize. So this speaks right to what the majority leader is saying, if they're listening to their constituents, and this is being done all over the country, they're going to move of their own volition. But the three of us are supporting a states' rights approach that says decriminalize at the federal level, give the states the option.
Right. We're not forcing the states, but we believe this will give impetus to the states and impetus to their populations that are strongly for this. Go ahead, Broom.
Yes. What effect will this have on New York and other states that have already decriminalized?
Well,
Did you say New Jersey or New York, sir?
he's talking about that football team that has the NY on their helmet.
That plays in New Jersey.
Yeah, we have this discussion every time we do something.
I've listened to this.
What professional football team is in Oregon?
We believe in the trailblazers.
The Trailblazers. Yes, they're doing all right. The bottom line is it's still against federal law. So even though the state can legalize, which New York has done, this will not have the federal government interfere in any way.
Last question.
Last question.
This is just a clarification question. So does this mean that Senate will not act on the House-passed Safe Banking Act?
Look, this is a very comprehensive bill. We put a lot of work and a lot of time into this. It's a draft bill, and we're going to now go to our colleagues and ask explicitly to all of them, what don't you support here? What can you support here? We're going to get something done, and we'll have to figure out, the best way to get that done, but we are going to get something done. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. All right, and there it is, Chucky the Shoe, Wyden and Booker. The comment period is open until September 1st, so it's through August. I dropped and it's by email. I don't know if they're going to get up a page. Right now, there is only an email address. And thanks to Deborah Borchardt, Green Market Report. We'll get into this maybe a little bit, see what she has to say. But, well, of course, they are referencing Marijuana Moment, which everyone does, and good on them for shouting them out. But apparently interested parties are encouraged to submit comments on these and other issues to cannabis_reform at finance.senate.gov by September 1st. So hit them up with your comments today or as soon as you can before September 1st. Now, let's dig into Kyle Jaeger's work a little bit. Here is that clarification as to who would control cannabis. Let's see. Yeah, a tax 10 to 25%. That's not good. Further, the legislation would transfer regulatory authority over cannabis from the Drug Enforcement Administration to the FDA, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, ATF, which is basically the DEA for explosives, right? And tobacco. So, and the Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. So we go from one organization to three organizations. California is, it's one of the things we'll chat about a little bit, some of the stories we're looking at, but California is now consolidating their 3 cannabis control state groups to one. Overall, cannabis control department in California, and we'll talk about that in a second. But this one is actually now splitting it, getting it out of the DEA's hand, and turning it over to the FDA, the ATF, and the TTB. So I don't know how good that is. This happened with hemp, with the FDA, because they were in charge of regulating everything that was coming from hemp, and basically the USDA was controlling the licensing for growing it. So we had 2 organizations. Hey, Chella, we must write our reps to talk about draconian taxation. That's right. Number one thing is that 10 to 25% tax that they are going to grow, starting at 10, growing to 25% over 5 years. That ends up being a 38% in California plus 25 Fed. That's a 63% tax in California on your weed purchase. Yeah, that's not going to stop a traditional market. by any sense of the imagination. So we have 3 organizations in the government now going to be controlling cannabis as opposed to 1. We are going to have a taxation from 10 to 25%. Now, they were very adamant that there was going to be no standalone banking bill going through and that they will stop that. So I think that's the leverage they're trying to use with this bill in order to get support from the Republicans and others that want banking. So pretty sure, let's see if Kyle says here, we grant consumer rights. Okay, so here's how let's take a little deeper look as to how these organizations are going to control it. FDA would be recognized as the primary federal regulatory authority with respect to the manufacture and marketing of cannabis products, including requirements related to minimum national good manufacturing practices, product standards, registration and listing and labeling information related to ingredients and directions for use. So the FDA is going to be the major controller and authority. Meanwhile, the TTB would have jurisdiction over marijuana tax and trade practices. That would include cannabis tax revenue collection, tax law enforcement, and tracking and tracing of marijuana products. Now, what about the ATF? Don't see, let's see. The war on drugs has been a war on people, particularly people of color. The Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act aims to end the decades of harm inflicted on communities of color by removing cannabis from the federal list of controlled substances and empowering states to implement their own cannabis laws. The senator said in a summary of the bill that was shared with Marijuana Moment, descheduling cannabis is a critical step towards achieving justice for those targeted and hard hit by the war on drugs, but that alone isn't enough. That is the best news out of it, is that it does come off the Controlled Substances Act, but it unleashes the power of the states as well as the FDA. I do not see any details as to how the ATF, in this wonderful summary by Kyle Jaeger, I'll dig a little bit more into the bill myself and see where the ATF comes in. But obviously they are the law enforcement arm of the taxation branch, as well as, I'm going to say, illegal grows. It's going to be the ATF that's going to be going after illegal grows instead of the DEA, right? That's what they're there for. And so the traditional, they got to have somebody that's going to rein in the traditional market, which ain't going anywhere if you're going to have a 25% federal tax on cannabis, even if that money goes towards rebuilding people destroyed by these laws. New Jersey just expunged 88,000 cannabis crimes. Fantastic. We should see that on a federal level. But the ATF, they got the guns. The FDA doesn't have the guns. The TTB doesn't have the guns. The ATF, they're armed. They will be the enforcers. That's basically what they're going to be. And I'll dig out that language, see what it says about the ATF in the bill, draft discussion bill. Social equity, big problem here in California, and we're going to talk about that on the next episode of Controlled on the first Saturday of August. Social equity, as promised, the senators are including language into the bill that would promote social justice for those who've been disproportionately impacted on the war on drugs. Quote, communities that have been most harmed by cannabis prohibition are benefiting the least from the legal marijuana marketplace. That's true here. The findings section of the bill says, noting that a legacy of racial and ethnic injustices compounded by the disproportionate collateral consequences of 80 years of cannabis prohibition enforcement now limits participation in the industry. The bill seeks to repair that harm by mandating each federal district to expunge arrests and convictions for nonviolent marijuana offenses within 1 year. And it also allows people who are still under a criminal sentence for cannabis to obtain a resentencing review hearing. So a mandate for each federal district to expunge arrests and convictions for nonviolent marijuana offenses. So that is a federal expungement on a local level. Every state is going to be mandated to do it. So that is pretty good. And I guess they're hoping that is going to allow, bring down a barrier to entry in many states. Now, you have local crimes, state crimes that would have to be addressed, as well as the dysfunctional social equity programs in every state. It's a statewide problem. Denver has launched a program to fix their 6-year problem with social equity, because that's how long they've been around legal. And California is 3 years in, and the social equity program in California is a mess, They just recently passed a $100 million grant to go to local governments to push them to get permanent licensing done. There are very few permanent licenses that have been issued in California at this point. 0 permanent social equity licenses, 0 have been issued. They're all preliminary or preliminary, forgot the word. But yeah, they're all temporary. And those licenses expire with the new budget and the new law that's going to be passed under this new organization that's going to control California cannabis.
Cost benefits ratio that we have here for America. So
I want you to go away. So there we have it, a draft discussion bill for federal cannabis legalization. Historical in the sense that the Senate Majority Leader is putting his full weight behind him, behind this bill, this process. He calls it a process. Trust the process, I guess, is what we have to do. Of course, we've been trusting this process for a while, but we need to keep our representatives' feet to the fire. Daily Dope, let's see, you've made a couple of great comments. I want to highlight one you said earlier. I can see a future where it's no longer the prohibitionists that drive the police to arrest people for weed, but the heads of the corporate lobby pushing them, like the attack on caregiving, and then mentioning that that in Michigan, the lobby was using townships to weed out the caregivers in Michigan, like they already did in the other rec states. Yes, they did that in California. Prop 64 basically eliminated caregivers from California. They eliminated the nonprofit structure of collectives and being a caregiver. You can technically still be a caregiver for people and grow plants, but the process is useless. You can't really do it. It's like getting a medical card in California. It's expensive. It doesn't give you any benefit really. A small discount on taxes. It doesn't save you the 15% main tax from the state. And I'm sure it wouldn't protect you from these federal taxes. So patients and caregiving is a joke in legal cannabis states. Oklahoma is still a medical state, and they have a good, decent medical program. You know, we'll see if they ever go legal, how that's going to be affected. But so far, anytime a state goes legal, their patients get screwed by taxes, by access. Well, you can get it. You could just walk into anywhere and buy it now. Yeah, but it's cost prohibitive. It's the only. So I forget who said it, but it's the only product that's been legalized and the price went up. So they would try to, let's get it into the mass market. Let's make it legal and create competition. And the prices all went up. The prices across country are just ridiculous for legal cannabis. And then you throw the taxes on top of that. Pennsylvania is a great example. Highest prices in the country, and no relief, I don't think, from taxes there. So that's going to keep the traditional market around. Yes, and who's going to be enforcing that? That's going to be the ATF. The ATF are going to go after because that's what's happening here in California too, is a lot of the money in the taxation is going towards enforcement of shutting down illegal shops, illegal grows, and not just the cartels that are growing in the forest. They're shutting down just mom and pop stuff too, all over the place. So it's because the barriers to entry are just so high. It's so expensive. There are many social equity applicants that basically have been driven to bankruptcy, of financial ruin, because they've had to hold on to a lease for 3 years where they haven't been able to get a license or an approval. And it's just been one thing after another a barrier to, get folks that we're supposed to be helping with these social equity programs in the local region, local, townships, as you say, or cities. Like Oakland has its own program, which is supposed to be the best, and it's having trouble. So, corporate cannabis is not our friend, and I don't know. Is this bill going to be our friend? Is descheduling it and turning it over to 3 other groups to tax it? Basically, you're going to see, you see all these CBD companies being shut down online for making health claims. So that's going to continue with cannabis now that even though it's descheduled. The FDA, if it's not a scheduled drug, that whole, what kind of authority are they going to have? Is it going to be a nutritional supplement? Is it going to be a dietary addition? Is that how they're going to handle it? Like a vitamin? That'd be interesting. An intoxicating vitamin. So it's going to be, obviously they're going to write rules. They're going to have public comment. It's going to be a years-long process once that happens. And then so there'll be this legal limbo similar to what we've got going on in hemp, which is it's crazy. Got Delta 8 coming out of that because of the loophole of creating whatever you can out of the hemp plant. You've got a severe lack of testing and control, if you will, over what's going into these hemp products. This is obviously gonna not solve all the problems. Is it good? Well, let's see what we get past. We're gonna need, as Chella says, we the people must lobby relentlessly. Yes, we must lobby relentlessly. 2022 is going to be huge for cannabis in many of the states. And certainly Chuck Schumer is going to be running with this, as will anyone else up for re-election. So, and we're going to see who comes out against it and uses it as their platform against, to try to, I think we're going to get, it might work out perfectly. To get this through. Then, of course, Biden is really Biden is the wild card. Is Biden going to sign it if we get this through? So all to be determined. This is not a bill that's going to be voted on. This is a discussion draft. The public comment period is open through September 1st. I dropped it in the chat. I will put it in the description of this video. It's through email, and you can start flooding them with emails now about the taxation, about the whatever you got a problem with, the states' rights, a protection of patients, maybe somehow getting a tax break for patients. Maybe if you're a medical patient, you don't have to pay the federal tax, or you get a tax discount. Let's add that to the bill if they want a tax. So if this happens, watch the ATF outgrow Homeland Security in a week. Right, absolutely. They're going to get huge funding. We're going to need, we're going to have to shut down all of these illegal grows on federal land. They're going to join in with the National Guards of these states. California National Guard, it's one of their biggest deals is going after cannabis grows. So weekly letter writing on out of control. Yes, that's a good idea. Good idea. Weekly letter writing, out of control. Our letter writing campaign is for this legislation, this draft legislation that is being proposed by Senator Chuck Schumer. And let's see, I'll drop that. Let me grab that email again. I will drop it in the chat. Next steps, here we go. By September 1st, interested parties are encouraged to submit comments on these and other issues. So whatever problem you've got with cannabis scheduling or legalization or this bill, send it to cannabis_reform@finance.senate.gov by September 1st. And then we'll see what the other senators, hopefully now that it's out in the open, we're going to get more press and more stories talking to senators who may or may not support this bill. We're going to see those senators that are going to embrace it come out in support. I'm sure you'll see a lot of response from the Cannabis Caucus in the House and their comments with regards to this and how it combines or coalesces with the MORE Act, which there seems to be a lot of overlap with the MORE Act. So reconciliation may not be too tough. The states' rights issue may be a thing, but it also may be the way we get it passed. So I don't know. What do you think? Leave a comment, subscribe, get notifications for when Out of Control goes live with these breaking stories of super import or that actually, turn me on. Some of the other stories we're watching coming up, as I mentioned, California is now going to, the feds are going to split up cannabis control between 3 organizations, the FDA, the TTB, and the ATF, whereas California is consolidating their Bureau of Cannabis Control into the new California Department of Cannabis Control. It's Bureau of Cannabis Control. Well, it was the Bureau of Cannabis Control. It was, I believe, it was the two other departments that were handling growing. The Department of Agriculture was doing growing licensing, and manufacturing was being done by somebody else, I forget. But now they are all going to be under one big roof, and Governor Newsom has announced appointments, 4 of them, 4 appointments to the yet created department. It hasn't really technically even been voted on. I believe it's in the budget, and it hasn't passed yet. And but he has announced the appointment of the director of the California Department of Cannabis Control, the chief deputy, the general counsel, and the deputy director of legal. There's 5. Deputy director of legal, and the 5th one is the deputy director of equity and inclusion, Eugene Hilsman, who is the head of equity for San Francisco. So there we have 5 appointments of a new cannabis bureau, centralized California Department of Cannabis Control under one roof. And let's see if that speeds up the licensing process, to be determined. But that is not going well in California. Hopefully, maybe centralization will streamline that process. I don't know, possibly. Following up on a story we covered on Controlled and interviewed Miss Alexis Bortel, one of those marijuana refugees, medical marijuana refugees in Colorado. I thought for a second Cory Booker might have been referencing her, but her story is duplicated on many kids and parents having to move out of states with prohibition to Colorado, to states that don't, like Colorado. But as we found out from Alexis Bortel, they don't make it easier, and they're making it harder for medical cannabis patients with more restrictions with a new law, the House Bill 1317, which got signed, not vetoed. It was passed and signed into law, and we have our first lawsuit from California Normal, Colorado legal challenge filed to halt imposition of medical cannabis restrictions. So this was basically what Alexis Bortel was talking about on our interview. It was a big effort to try to stop the bill from being passed, although it was very popular in both houses in Colorado as a way to. It was linked to all of these recent studies that are being released about high concentration cannabis and THC with the potential of psychosis. We know the story behind many of those studies. And but that information is being used or was used to push this bill through to protect the children. But it's, as Alexa said, it's highly discriminatory. It really just it separates patients from their doctors even more, and gets politicians and laws in between them, making it harder for patients to get medicine, harder for patients to see doctors, and essentially not making many of the beneficial results of COVID on the medical cannabis program in many states, not making those permanent, like telemedicine. So this bill finally is getting, or now is getting a lawsuit. Not finally, it's they pretty much launched this right away, a couple of days after the signing. But a lawsuit has been filed challenging the implementation of House Bill 1317, which imposes new rules and restrictions upon physicians who recommend medical cannabis in their patients. The case, let's take a look here. The lawsuit, which was filed by a 19-year-old patient who uses cannabis for the treatment of severe epilepsy, argues that the proposed changes will unduly restrict medical cannabis across access among patients and will discourage physicians from participating in the program. It further argues that the broad range of significant changes proposed by the law can only be made via constitutional amendments, not by the passage of legislation. That's interesting. 54% of Colorado voters decided in 2000 to favor a constitutional amendment to establish the state's medical cannabis access program. Normal testified against the adoption of HB 1317, which was backed by a number of anti-cannabis organizations, including those publicly opposed to the use of herbal cannabis as a therapeutic treatment in all situations. So we have the prohibitionist lobby going after this or supporting this bill. That's always a big red flag. It passed with giant support in both houses, signed by probably the most progressive governor in the United States, possibly, and a big supporter of medical cannabis, but signed the bill, and now we have a lawsuit. So we will follow that lawsuit all the way to Clarence Thomas, if that's the case. So there you go. Following up on a story we did cover. What else? What else did we cover? The bill on psychedelics in California is making progress. Advancing, pardon me, coffee here. Kyle Jaeger also writing in Marijuana Moment. The bill is advancing. We covered that story. Senator Weiner advancing this decriminalization on possession limits. And Second California Assembly Committee on Tuesday approved the Senate-passed bill to legalize possession of psychedelics like psilocybin and LSD, but new amendments that add limits on allowable amounts of the substance is creating controversy among advocates. Limits, lists, and liberty. Always a theme of controlled and out of control. They like to, if there's a limit, is it really legal? That's the question. If you can have only so many ounces of herb, grow so many plants, have so many mushrooms, and somebody's got to keep track of that and arrest people who are outside those limits. So the prison industrial complex gets basically advanced and funded when you assign limits to these substances. And the traditional market doesn't go away. So that is something we are following. This was an interesting story that came across the wire. How a psychedelics call-in line is helping people trip better. That's kind of cool. Rolling Stone. When we are testing the process, we're also saying it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to not be okay, says the support lines director. This is a part of a bigger thing happening, and we're going to be with you through it. So that you can find a trip sitter with a call-in line. I don't know, I guess that would be effective, I suppose. We'll see. To be determined. And as I mentioned, this is great news. Nearly 88,000 New Jersey marijuana cases vacated or dismissed this month following decriminalization implementation. Many of the states that passed expungement are implementing their programs, and 88,000. Look, that's a drop in the bucket of who's being locked up, by the way. Good on this draft bill from the senators on basically mandating federal expungement. But this is the state of New Jersey vacating or dismissing this month 88,000 cases. That's pretty exciting. Also following up on Carrie Richardson, her banning from the Olympics because of her cannabis use. World Anti-Doping Agency says U.S. bears responsibility for marijuana ban that led to Richardson's suspension. Wasn't us. It was you guys. And we're saying, well, they got to get with the times. But it was all us. And guess what? We're going to have to change that. So I guess that bill would do a world of good to descheduling federally cannabis, and then the World Doping Agency won't have a leg to stand on. So basically, it's kick the can, point the finger, pass the hot potato, pass the bud, hot bud, and the U.S. bears responsibility for marijuana. It's not our fault; it's their fault. which is true. 80 years of prohibition. We've got our new agency in California. Let's see, what else? Colorado. Let's see. Okay, here we go. This is a nice fight locally going on in Chicago. If we don't fight, who will? Activists demand reparations for ex-cons convicted of marijuana charges in Illinois. That's an interesting story. It's wrong for them to benefit off the same product they were incarcerated with us, said Tyrone Muhammad, a founder of the group Ex-Cons for Community and Social Change. Muhammad and Greg Sherman, also of the organization, plan to camp outside of specific cannabis dispensary for the week to highlight the inequities and injustice of the cannabis industry. It is no secret the state is lagging when it comes to social equity in the billion-dollar pot industry. CBS 2 has repeatedly covered the delays and lags with the program meant to fight that. So there you go. Illinois also having a problem. This is a nationwide problem. The social equity programs are basically a scam to get tax money into the coffers of localities, to keep small mom and pop, growers and businesses out of the business, out of the field, out of the competition. The only equity or the only companies in California that are able to survive this 3-year lag and delays here in California are the ones with deep pockets, who've got celebrity brands or huge investors, or like Acreage Holdings or any of those other companies that are, they can weather this storm. They can get through, and so that all the small players are driven out through financial ruin, and then it's only the big players that are going to be left to rake in the profits, as well as the governments getting their taxations. California finally got their $1 billion that we were promised in taxation, and now there's an effort by California NORML, who apparently was not. They were not. That according to Dale Geringer, they were not for Prop 64 the way it was written. They thought it was overwritten, and certainly was, and the overregulation, and they were not for it. So they're trying to change some of the law to make it better. They tried to get rid of taxes for patients last year, but that died. That bill died, didn't get anywhere. And now they're going for it again to try to basically do tax relief for all cannabis users in California, because California is getting $1 billion a year now in taxation, and not to mention the localities. So next year, there's going to be a move and a bill going through to try to give us some tax relief in California. So for a lot of people, that taxation on a federal level is going to be a non-starter. So get your comments into cannabis_reform at financesenate.gov. It's in the chat in the description by email, and tell them not to tax cannabis, or at least let patients out of the loop. Let's get patients out of the loop. And they're going to have, I don't know, maybe they can do something in that law to get these local social equity programs in line. But because basically I just see this as a trough for local coffers in cities. LA has gotten over $10 million in equity funds, and they have not given out a penny, I don't think. They paid for LAPD overtime with it, part of it, borrowed it, but I'm pretty sure none of the social equity money from LA has gone out. And there are some cities in this state that have gotten multiple infusions of social equity money and haven't spent a dime on any social equity programs or companies to further get these folks into the space. So it's a mess across the country, and it's activists are trying to advance changes on local levels. This is certainly happening here in California, even within the industry in California. There are efforts to get social equity back on track and get it fixed. So there are good folks in this industry here in California that their heart's in the right place, and they're doing the things we need to get social equity figured out. So we hope to bring you more about that, what's going on, the efforts here in California within the industry to help social equity work, get it started. We don't want to be 6 years down the road like Colorado is I mean, these states that are just starting up, Illinois is just, and they are raking in the money in Illinois. They are raking it in. And here we have a dysfunctional social equity program, and it's all meant to drive out small players. That's all it is. Yo, Joe Smith, everybody jumping in the chat. A trip sitter, Brave New World on the phone, 1-800-TRIP-OUT. That's not the number. Patrick Starr, yes, it is a Brave New World. I haven't done my hero's dose because I'm looking for a good trip setter, but it's on my list of things I want to do. Yeah, exactly. Administration and Opportunity Act. At least they still can come up with fancy names. Yeah. Well, it doesn't, let's see, what does it stand for? There's no cute nomenclature or acronym that they've created with this bill, as far as I can see. What is it? The CC, control. Let's see, what is it called? It's called. It should roll off the tip of my tongue. I think it's right there in the description. What is it called? Kyle Jaeger, guys, right at the top. Let's get it. It is called the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, CAOA. Doesn't stand for anything that I can come up with. No fun name to call it. But maybe that'll go through. Maybe that's one of the things we could change. Maybe I know under Trump, I wanted Tulsi Gabbard to rename her bill the Trump Act, the total repeal of the unfair marijuana prohibition, to see if he would sign it and get behind it. But she thought that was funny. So yeah, no cute an acronym for our Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. At least the MORE Act had a little something going. Chilla, write your electeds directly as well as on the email. That's a great idea. Contact your local senator directly, as well as sending in, say, hey, I just sent this to this email, and this is how I feel about this act. Please support it. Please support the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act with these additions. Joe Smith, if all fossil fuels and their derivatives, as well as trees for paper and construction, were banned in order to save the planet, reverse greenhouse effect, and stop deforestation, then there is only, waiting, exact amount of characters allowed, yes. Waiting for your second toast. Yes, well, hemp could help out with that as well. Hemp could save the planet, as Jack Herer has always said. And if we had followed that direction, as opposed to the plastics fossil fuel direction back in the day, not only would medicine be a lot different and healthier for us all, and the planet would certainly be in a lot better shape. We wouldn't have plastics to the extent we have them. And, we'd be living a hemp economy, which is what we can have now. We can create that if we can just get these corporate and government greed factories out of the way. The taxes are ridiculous. The prices are ridiculous for what you're getting on a retail level. But that's because of basically the barrier, how expensive it is to operate a cannabis business. It's ridiculous. You might as well be, running guns or plutonium to terrorists with the amount of regulation you've got going and the cost. And of course, 280E is a problem. That should be addressed, what should be taken care of if they get it past this bill. So there are a lot of, they're gonna get input from the cannabis industry on this bill, how they're gonna be able to unleash more of their profit-making ability. I don't see any comment or reaction as far as home grow in this bill. That's one of the things I'm going to dig into and look up, is if it's going to protect home grow, because that doesn't seem to be one of the issues that's been brought up. So that, of course, has to be a big issue, a big consideration. We got to have home grow. If they're going to limit it to 6 plants or 12 plants, fine, do whatever you're going to do, limits, but you've got to have some level of home grow available for people to do it. I want to live an off-grid cannabis commune with excellent Wi-Fi. Yeah, if we could find that, Cello, we'd be there in a heartbeat. Anybody's got any ideas, let us know. I brought up the jack-o'-lantern. Yes, if you're referring to Who are you referring to? Trump or Boehner? Yeah, I brought it. We're going to have to get through Biden now. Biden wants to reschedule. Some think that's a good idea. Many think that is not a good idea. So as Schumer said, they're going to take this to the president after they get their input. Thankfully, good and bad input is over by September 1st. So make sure you get your comments in and directly to your representatives. And then after September 1st, we'll see how long it takes them to come out with their actual bill. I wouldn't hold your breath. It's probably they waited 6 months to get this draft discussion bill out. They're probably going to wait another 6 months to get the actual bill out to get us into the election year so that they can campaign on it for re-election in 2022. Now, many folks in the industry and in investment are saying that 2022 is going to be the year for legalization. So let's see if that's the case. They'll use the momentum of the election year for midterms with this bill, and maybe that will do it. Certainly, people voted more for marijuana and cannabis legalization in the states than they did for any politician. If you look back at the elections from 2020 and 2022, cannabis got more votes in the local elections. So they're going to get on the cannabis train, many of them. And so we'll see. Looks like maybe 2022 might be the year. I'm leaning that direction as well. We're going to get some form of federal cannabis reform. The States Act is sort of basically ensconced in protecting the states that don't want to have cannabis. The original States Act was to protect the states that are passing cannabis laws from the feds that want it. Now this is the reverse. This is protecting the states that don't want cannabis. But you will still be able, apparently, take your cannabis across state lines if your, one company is shipping cannabis to another company. Or maybe you'll be able to take, will you be able to take your cannabis across state lines if you're driving through a state that has prohibition? If you've got your receipt from a legal cannabis state, are the cops not going to bust you for it in Kansas? If you have your medical card, I doubt it. We're big fans of Jack Herer. One of our favorite books, of course, is The Emperor Wears No Clothes. So full of great history that's been buried. The original shadow ban of cannabis was the burying of much of the usage of cannabis in the early years of this in the 19th century. It was one of the most prevalent medicines and functional crops this country had. Hemp for Victory, of course, being uncovered by Jack Herer, the infamous Department of Agricultural film that you can watch on YouTube now, but it was buried for years. How every farmer and every household, you had to grow hemp in order to support the war effort because we couldn't get it from the Philippines. So, this is, we're on it. We're on it. Out of control, controlled. We're going to, expand the conversation from cannabis to psychedelics. Lots of amazing news. Project CBD has a story out this week on the advance of ketamine and its use in psychiatry. So it is a booming future for cannabis and other entheogenic plants. Free the plant, free the people is really what you need to do. So thank you for joining me for Out of Control today. Of course, we have been talking about the discussion draft of a federal cannabis legalization bill that has been introduced by Senators Chuck Schumer, Senator Ron Wyden, and Senator Cory Booker. And of course, you won't have, I don't know how their senators sign on to this, but they're going to be talking to them. And then, kicking the cannabis can down the road to get us a bill actually introduced into the Senate. But I suppose this is historic enough. It's never been done. You've never seen support from a majority leader. And much of that is due to the advancement of states legalizing the fact that cannabis reform is one of the most popular issues in the country. I think we're up to 93% of the population want it descheduled or at least available for medicine. I mean, we're talking, vast majority of the country want this off the Schedule 1. They want federal hands off of cannabis. So that's why you're seeing these states come through. So many in 2020 and so many this year in 2021. 2022 is going to be no different. We're going to see states break through. We're going to see local lawmakers try to stop those states, and of course they're trying to ensconce this change in Colorado into the Constitution. Discrimination against patients ensconced in the Colorado Constitution. We'll see how far that goes in the courts. So thank you all for joining us. Subscribe, get notifications for when Out of Control goes live and when we go live on the first Saturday of August for Controlled. I'm going to go, now that I'm getting back into the groove, I'm going to do this more often as cannabis news breaks. One of the things I want to do on this show is bring on other cannabis media. I've been following a lot since we took our sabbatical of doing live cannabis news. I've been following a lot of great cannabis news on YouTube, including LMC, including Cannabis Legalization News with Miggy 420 and Tom. And there's really just a lot of great cannabis media that's come up over the last year or two. And I hope to have them on, as well as folks like Kyle Jaeger, and basically create a meet the press for cannabis, sort of a weed the press. Daily Dope, of course, you're always welcome to discuss topics. And I was going to do that today, but I just didn't have time to get everything set up. But we're going to have a Discord channel for Out of Control and Controlled, and we'll do call-ins through that. So stay tuned for that. Follow me over on DC420LA on Twitter and all the socials. And don't forget, we are still continue to do our Cannabis Helps Dementia podcast, which is going really well. We've just had some amazing interviews this season. You can find them here on the channel, Cannabis Saves the World, here on YouTube. You can watch all the video versions of our podcast there. You can listen to the podcast itself on any of the podcast services, directly on Anchor FM/Cannabis Helps Dementia, or just put in Cannabis Helps Dementia on any of the podcast services and they'll pop up. Yeah, great. Thanks, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And we'll be back with more Out of Control and Controlled on the first Saturday of the month. Chella, anything else that I'm missing? Make sure you contact your senators, your representatives. Send that email to the committee here that's basically doing the collecting of information. Cannabis_reform@finance.senate.gov by September 1st. We will do follow-ups on that as it gets closer. We'll, of course, cover it on Controlled on the first Saturday of August, which is August 7th. So we'll see Chella back on the show on that day. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I'm going to continue to get into this bill and find out what we can find out a little more depth and get my comments in regarding the 163 pages, taxation, patient rights, liberty, and social justice, and social equity, because it's a mess. It's a mess. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Love you all. Free the plant, free the people. See you next time. Peace.